Hello guys, in today's video we are going to see the stereochemical aspect of nucleophilic substitution reaction. In the previous videos we have seen about how alkyl halides undergo nucleophilic substitution reaction through two mechanisms, SN1 and SN2 mechanisms. In today's video we are going to see the stereochemical aspects of those reactions. So you should know what is meant by stereochemical aspect. So before we move on to the main topic, I just want to recall few topics that we learned in grade 11. What is mean by isomerism? You have studied in grade 11. Isomers are those compounds which have same molecular formula but they have different structural formula. That property is called as isomerism. There are two types of isomerism, structural isomerism and stereoisomerism. When you are writing your compounds on the paper and you are considering only the two-dimensional picture of that particular compound, and if you can find any difference in that isomers, then we call that as structural isomerism. There are four types: chain isomerism, position isomerism, functional isomerism and metamerism. For example, if you are writing propane 1-ol and propane 2-ol on a paper, both have the same molecular formula but the position of the functional group is different. OH is in the first carbon in propane 1-ol and the OH is in the second carbon in propane 2-ol. So they are related to each other by difference in their position of their functional group, but they have the same molecular formula. So such isomers come under structural isomerism. The other one, stereoisomerism. When we consider the three-dimensional arrangement of the atoms in space, then we call that as stereoisomerism. So we have seen about dotted wedge and solid wedge lines to represent whether the atom or group is towards the observer or behind the plane of the paper. So that is called as three-dimensional arrangement. So if the three-dimensional arrangement is different in two compounds but they have the same molecular formula, then we call them as stereoisomers. There are two types of stereoisomerism: optical isomerism and geometrical isomerism. Again, geometrical isomerism you have studied in grade 11 where we talk about cis and trans structures. So now we are going to learn about optical isomerism. So before we move on to optical isomerism, again we have to recall few of the basic concepts related to this optical isomerism. If you take a light from any source, it will be made up of electromagnetic waves, and these waves will be vibrating in all planes. So that's what I've represented here. This is an ordinary light and these electromagnetic waves are vibrating in all direction. If you pass this ordinary light through a prism called Nicol prism, what will happen? The emitted light waves will vibrate in only one plane. Before passing through the Nicol prism, the light waves are vibrating in all direction. If you're passing it through Nicol prism, it will be vibrating in only one plane. We call this as plane polarized light. And this is done by this prism, Nicol prism. So we call this as polarizer. So a plane polarized light will vibrate in only one plane. So now look at this. I'm taking a source of light, passing it through Nicol prism. Now I'm getting a plane polarized light. Now if I pass this plane polarized light through some sample solution, this plane polarized light can be rotated either clockwise or anti-clockwise. If this substance can rotate the plane polarized light either clockwise or anti-clockwise direction, then we call that substance as optically active substance. Optics means light. So when your sample solution can rotate the plane polarized light either in clockwise direction or in anti-clockwise direction, then we call your substance as optically active substance. Now we are going to define few terms. What are optically active substances? Substances that are capable of rotating the path of plane polarized light. They are called as optically active substances, and this property is called as optical activity. And I told you the substance can rotate the light either in clockwise or in anti-clockwise direction. If the substance rotate the light in clockwise direction, we call them as dextrorotatory, and it is represented as small d or it is designated with plus sign. If the substance rotates the plane polarized light in anti-clockwise direction, we call them as levorotatory, and it is represented as small l or with a negative sign. For example, this is how we write. If the substance rotates the light in clockwise direction, we put a plus. For example, plus butane 2-ol. If you are writing minus 2-chlorobutane, then it is levorotatory. So these optically active substances, they usually occur as pair of molecules. Okay, we call that pair of molecules as optical isomers, which means they will be having the same formula, but one will be rotating the light in clockwise direction, the other will be rotating the light in anti-clockwise direction. So these two pairs are called optical isomers. So to understand optical isomers, you need to know few more basic concepts. As I told, these optically active substances, they generally occur as pair of molecules known as optical isomers. To study the structure of such pairs, we need to understand this chirality and dissymmetry. Because the pair of molecules are related to each other in the same way as these are related. Now I'll show you. Now look at this alphabet. I've written P. This is the mirror. So if you take a mirror image of P, you get this image. Same way, if you take the mirror image of R, you get this image. Now if you try to move this R over this R, are they matching? Are they superimposable? No, they are non-superimposable mirror images. You can consider this as asymmetric images. Look at your left hand and your right hand. Both are mirror images to each other. If you keep your left hand and see in the mirror, you will get the image which will be similar to your right hand. Now if you try to superimpose your right hand on the left hand, they will not superimpose. It will not match. The mirror image will not match. So the same way, these images, they are non-superimposable mirror images. The reason why they are non-superimposable is they do not have a plane of symmetry. What is mean by a plane of symmetry? If you draw a line exactly in the center, two halves should be the same, but this is not having a plane of symmetry, and they exist as non-superimposable mirror images to each other. See, this R cannot be superimposed on this mirror image, and this P cannot be superimposed on this mirror image. These are called as chiral objects. Okay, this property is called as chirality or dissymmetry. When the object's mirror image and the original image cannot be superimposed, we call them as chiral objects. Same way, we have other objects like this. See, O, A and M. All of these have a plane of symmetry. See, I've put a dotted line. Now if you take the mirror image, you can get the same image. Now if I move this O on this O, they will be matching. Same way, if I move this A on this A, they will be matching. If I'm moving this M on this M, they will be matching. Now they are symmetric and they are called as achiral. They have superimposable mirror images. The original and the mirror image are superimposable on each other. The reason why we are learning about this is, for a substance to be optically active, this chirality or dissymmetry is an important criteria. Now let us extend this concept of chirality and dissymmetry to certain organic compounds. Here I have taken the example of propane 2-ol. What is propane 2-ol? You have CH3, CH2, CH3, that is propane, and if you remove one hydrogen from the second carbon and you substitute it by a OH, you get what? Propane 2-ol. So this is propane 2-ol. Now if you take this propane 2-ol and draw it in this three-dimensional structure, which means with a solid and dotted wedge, you are writing this as propane 2-ol. Now this is the mirror plane. I'm taking the mirror image of this. Okay, see, 2CH3, 1H and OH, and this is this carbon. This carbon is in the center. H, 2CH3 and OH. If I take a mirror image, I get this image. See, OH will be here, CH3 is here, CH3 is here, and H. So this is the mirror image. Now if I rotate this mirror image, okay, if I rotate this mirror image to 180 degree, I'm getting this C structure. Okay, now these two structures are superimposable on each other. If I move this A over C, they will be matching. Okay, so now we say this carbon is not chiral. If a carbon should be chiral, I told you in the previous slide, it should have dissymmetry. What is mean by dissymmetry here? All the four groups or atoms attached to this carbon should be different. Then only this carbon can be a chiral carbon, or it can have the dissymmetry. But here two groups are same. So there is no chiral carbon. And then we call this as an achiral molecule because no chiral center. We call this chiral center as stereo center also. And now the mirror image is superimposable on the original molecule. Okay, the mirror image is superimposable on the original molecule. So we conclude that propane 2-ol cannot be optically active. As I told you, if your compound should be optically active, first criteria, it should have a chiral carbon. What is mean by a chiral carbon? All the four groups or atoms attached to this carbon should be different. And the second criteria, they should have a mirror image which is non-superimposable on its original molecule. So it is not satisfying both the criteria. So propane 2-ol is optically inactive, which means it cannot rotate the plane polarized light in any direction, either clockwise or anti-clockwise. It cannot rotate, so it is optically inactive. Now we will move on to one more example. Here I have taken the example of butane 2-ol. What is butane 2-ol? You have 4 carbon atoms, and in the second position you have what? OH group. Look here, this is the butane 2-ol. See, CH3, CH2, CH3 and one H here and one OH here. So this is butane 2-ol, and this carbon is a chiral carbon, which means, see, this carbon is at the center. 1, 2, 3, 4. All the 4 groups are different. So it is represented here. This is the original molecule, carbon, OH, CH3, see, this is ethyl group, methyl group, hydrogen and hydroxyl group. Now I am taking a mirror image of this. So this is the mirror image. If I rotate it to 180 degree, I get this image. Now this image is non-superimposable on the original molecule. Okay, this is also considered as the mirror image. So as I said in the previous slide, it should have a chiral carbon, then only it can be optically active. And yes, this butane 2-ol has a chiral carbon because all the 4 groups and atoms attached to it are different. And then it has a non-superimposable mirror image, because if I move this structure on this structure, they are not going to be matching. Matching means what? OH should be on OH, yes, it is there, but CH3 should be on CH3, yes, but these two, H and CH2, CH3 are different, so they will not be matching. So they have non-superimposable mirror image. So such pair of molecules which are non-superimposable mirror images of each other are known as enantiomers. We use this term enantiomers when we talk about optical isomers. So what are enantiomers? The pair of molecules which are non-superimposable images of each other are known as enantiomers, and this is possible when there is a chiral carbon, and again which is possible when there is asymmetric carbon or dissymmetry in the molecule. Now let's see few more examples of chiral molecules. So hereafter don't worry about the mirror images and all those stuff, because we are going to focus only on chiral molecules, which is very easy to identify. When you have a carbon which is having all the 4 groups or atoms attached to it differently, then we call that as chiral molecule. So I've explained all this optical activity and mirror images to explain enantiomers, because we use the term, so you should not get confused what are enantiomers. So for that purpose we use the mirror images, but here when we talk about chiral molecules, just look for the carbon with 4 different atoms or groups attached to it. Now see, the first example is 2-chlorobutane. So this is 2-chlorobutane, 4 carbon atoms, and the second carbon chlorine. So take this carbon. Okay, first take this carbon. You have all 3 groups same, so this carbon is not chiral. Again, check with this carbon. You have 2 hydrogens, 2 same groups, so this is not chiral. Same with this 3 hydrogens, so this is also not chiral. Now look at this carbon. This is ethyl group. This is hydrogen. This side chlorine. The other one is CH3. So this is what? This carbon is a chiral carbon. So a chiral carbon is usually represented with an asterisk. So this is a chiral carbon. So this can be represented this way. So they'll ask you which of this is a chiral carbon. So this is a chiral carbon. Second example, 2,3-dihydroxypropanal. When you say propanal, What functional group is that? Aldehyde group, CHO. So propanal, you have to include the carbon in the functional group also when you count the number of carbon atoms in the parent chain. So 1, 2, 3, 3 carbon atoms, so propanal, and in the second and the third carbon there is 2 OH groups, so dihydroxy propanal. Now this carbon is chiral carbon. See, for to this carbon CH2OH is attached, this side OH is attached, one side H is there, the other side CHO. So all the four are different. So this carbon is chiral carbon. The third example, bromochloroiodomethane. Obviously all the four groups are different. So this carbon is chiral carbon. And 2-bromopropanoic acid. Propanoic acid, 3 carbon atoms. Same way you have to include the carbon in the functional group also. So this is propanoic acid. In the second position you have bromo. So this carbon with 4 different groups, it is again chiral. So this is how you have to identify chiral carbon. Now we will see few example where you can identify whether the given molecule is chiral or achiral. So look at the first question. You have 2 molecules. Which of these is chiral? Now see, this carbon, all the 4 groups are different. So this is chiral. But here to this carbon 2 bromine, same atoms are attached. So this is not chiral. So this is achiral, this is chiral. So I have put an asterisk here. Now look here, this carbon, okay, you can check with all the carbons. This carbon 3 same hydrogens are there. So this is not chiral. So this carbon, one side CH3, one side H, the other side CH2, CH3, and the fourth side Br. So this carbon is chiral. Here no chiral carbons. Same way here, this carbon is chiral. Why? See, all the 4 groups attached are different. See, this is what? This is CH3. When there is nothing, then this is CH2, again CH2. Here it is C with 4 different groups. One side CH3, one side OH, here H, this side CH2. So this carbon is chiral carbon. So this is how we have to identify whether the given molecule is chiral or achiral. When I started this video, I told you we are going to see about the stereochemical aspects of nucleophilic substitution reaction. So we have seen so far all the basics that you need to understand the stereochemical aspects. So before we go on to the stereochemical aspects, you need to define 3 important terms. Now let's try to define and understand these terms. Just now I told you what are enantiomers. What are enantiomers? They are the pair of molecules which are non-superimposable mirror images, and they can rotate the plane polarized light, and one will be rotating in clockwise direction, the other will be rotating in anti-clockwise direction, and that pair of molecules are called as enantiomers. Now we are going to define racemic mixture. If you have a mixture containing 2 enantiomers, both the isomers in equal proportions, then that mixture is known as racemic mixture. Okay, so we represented the racemic mixture as DL or plus minus. For example, plus minus butane 2-ol, which means it is a racemic mixture which has equal proportion of both the isomers. What are the both the isomers? One isomer which is rotating the light in clockwise direction, the other isomer rotating the light in anti-clockwise direction. When both are present in equal proportion, then we call that as what? Racemic mixture. The process of conversion of enantiomer into a racemic mixture is known as racemization, which can happen during a reaction. That I will show you now. So hope you understand what is meant by racemic mixture. See, when D is present, it can rotate the light in clockwise direction. When L is there, then it can rotate the light in anti-clockwise direction. When both D and L are present in equal proportion, both will cancel each other and the resultant mixture will be optically inactive. So racemic mixture cannot rotate the light because both the rotation will cancel out each other. So it will be optically inactive. So when you start a reaction with either D or L and end with DL, we call that process as racemization, which means both are present at the end of the reaction, both D and L. Now let's define the second term, retention of configuration, which means retaining the same configuration or the same arrangement of the atoms or groups around the chiral carbon as a result of the reaction. So when you start with a levorotatory compound and you end with again a levorotatory, what is retained? The configuration is retained. Then we call that as retention of configuration. Now look at this example, 2-methyl butane 1-ol. Butane, there are 4 carbon atoms, 1, 2, 3, 4. Butane 1-ol. In first carbon atom you have a OH. So 1, this is 2, 3, 4. In second carbon atom, you have a methyl group. Okay, so this is the chiral carbon. If the bond cleavage happens here other than the chiral center, then the configuration will not be changed, which means if it is levorotatory, the product will also be levorotatory. Now I'm treating this compound with HCl and I'm heating it. What is happening? This OH is substituted by Cl and H2O is going out, and this part, the chiral carbon, is unaffected. Only the bond cleavage happens here, so the configuration is retained. So we call this as retention of configuration. Now the third term, inversion of configuration. Suppose you are starting with a dextrorotatory compound and you are ending with a levorotatory, we call that as inversion of configuration. So the configuration of the chiral or asymmetric carbon gets changed as a result of the reaction. So you are taking 2-chlorobutane. In second carbon, you have a chlorine, so 2-chlorobutane, C2, 1, 2, 3, 4 carbon atoms. Now it is attacked by a nucleophile. You get a transition state, which means the nucleophile is attacking this carbon from the opposite direction of this halogen. Where we have seen this mechanism? This is the SN2 mechanism. So now when this is attacking here, this is the transition state where both bond forming and bond cleaving will happen simultaneously. So when you get the product, the Cl minus is going out and OH is getting attached here. Now the configuration has inverted. See, when you go out on a very windy day with an umbrella, what will you will see the umbrella will be inverted, just upside inside out. So same way, see, this is the umbrella. Consider this as an umbrella. Now it has turned inside out. So this is called as inversion of configuration. So when you take plus 2-chlorobutane, you end up with minus butane 2-ol. And remember, you cannot just look at the structure of the molecule and say whether it is dextrorotatory or levorotatory. But when there is inversion of configuration, what will happen? The configuration will also change from dextro to levo or levo to dextro. So these are the three terms. Now let's see all these three terms in one single reaction. We have seen inversion of configuration, retention of configuration and racemization in a reaction. So I'm taking a reactant. See, this is a reactant. This is a halobutane. Okay, I have 4 carbon atoms and this is a halogen and this carbon is a chiral carbon. Now I'm treating this compound, this is a haloalkane, treating this compound with Y. Okay, you can just take any attacking agent. I'm just this is a representation. We are not using any specific nucleophile or anything. So just take Y and I'm treating it with Y. Suppose first case, if inversion occurs, what will happen? All this 3 will be inverted and Y gets attached this side. So this is inversion of configuration. You get the compound B. Again, if I'm treating with Y, if I'm getting retention of configuration, which means the configuration is retained as such. See, C2H5, HCH3, it is retained and Y is getting replaced here instead of X. Now the configuration is retained. You get A. So when there is inversion, you get B. When there is retention, you get A. Where it is inverted, here it is retained. Again, if you are treating it with Y, if you get both A and B as the product, then that mixture is what? Racemic mixture. So one will be, 50% will be having retention of configuration, 50% will be having inversion of configuration. Then the resultant mixture will be called as racemic mixture and that process is called as racemization. So when you take a nucleophilic substitution reaction, there are 3 possibilities. There can be inversion of configuration or there can be retention or there can be both, which can end up in racemization. Now we are going to apply this to the SN1 and SN2 reactions. When the nucleophilic substitution reaction proceeds by SN2 mechanism, there will be inversion of configuration. We have seen already. See, if you are taking 2-bromo-octane, see, we are applying this to optically active alkyl halides. Not all the alkyl halides are optically active. So these stereochemistry can be talked or discussed only for optically active alkyl halides. So I've taken the example 2-bromo-octane, which is optically active because it has a chiral center. Okay, so this is negative 2-bromo-octane, which means it is levorotatory. I'm treating it with OH minus. OH minus attacks on the opposite side of Br and the configuration is inverted, like an inverted umbrella. And you're getting plus octane 2-ol because Br is replaced by OH. So I started with levorotatory and I'm getting dextrorotatory. So there is inversion of configuration. This can be seen in SN2 mechanism. Now we will see SN1 mechanism. What happens in SN1 mechanism in terms of stereochemistry. This reaction is proceeding by SN1 mechanism. See, when the reaction is proceeding by SN1 mechanism, you know it happens in 2 steps. When it is SN2, it was a single step reaction. Here it happens in 2-step reaction. So in the first step, this haloalkane will give you a carbocation. See, I have taken 2-bromobutane. 2-bromobutane, it has a chiral carbon because all the 4 groups or atoms attached to it are different. So this is minus 2-bromobutane, which means it is levorotatory. So in the first step, this Br is going out in the presence of the nucleophile as Br minus and you get a carbocation. This carbocation is planar in nature. So this is the structure of carbocation, CH3. This is ethyl group H and I put a plus to show it is a carbocation. And since this carbocation is symmetrical, which means it is planar, sorry, it is not symmetrical, it is planar. So in the second step, when the OH minus is attacking the carbocation, it can attack from either side. So from this side also OH can attack, from this side also it can attack. So if attacks from this side, I am getting plus butane 2-ol, which means there is inversion of configuration. When it is attacking this side, there is retention of configuration. So the attacking nucleophile will have an equal opportunity to attack the carbocation from either sides. So this will give a mixture of both the enantiomers, or a racemic mixture will be the outcome, which will contain both plus and minus butane 2-ol in equal proportion. So we call this as racemic mixture, and this process is called as racemization. What process? You have started with levorotatory and you're ending up with a racemic mixture, and that process is called racemization. So remember, when the reaction proceeds by SN2 mechanism, what is the stereochemistry? There will be inversion of configuration. When the reaction proceeds by SN1 mechanism, there will be racemization. This stereochemistry can be applied for optically active alkyl halides. Thank you. Before ending up this video, I want to make you understand the difference between configuration and optical rotation. Now see, when we took this example for explaining retention of configuration, we took levorotatory 2-methyl butane 1-ol and we end up with levorotatory chloro 2-methyl butane. If you see in your textbook, they would have given you dextrorotatory, which means plus chloro 2-methyl butane. Both are correct. Because here when we say retention of configuration, we say it means retaining same configuration or the same arrangement of atoms or groups around the chiral carbon. So there is no correlation between this arrangement and the optical rotation. So to understand this, I'll show you the difference between the configuration and optical rotation. First one, configuration. It refers to the spatial arrangement of the atoms of a chiral molecule. We have seen about enantiomers and we have seen how these enantiomers are non-superimposable mirror images to each other. If you take enantiomers, the arrangement of the atoms around the chiral center will be different in both enantiomers. So to name the enantiomers of a chiral compound, the stereocenters are labeled as R and S. So this R and S are named by taking into consideration the spatial arrangement of the atoms around the stereocenter. We call this method as Kahn-Ingold-Prelog method. We are not going to go very deep into it. I'll just show you an example. See, this is one optically active compound and this two are enantiomers. Now we call this as R and this as S. R stands for rectus and S stands for sinister. we actually name these R and S by taking into consideration and following certain rules. We take into consideration the atomic number. Say for example, here we have bromine, chlorine, hydrogen, and here carbon is attached to this carbon. So when you compare the atomic numbers, bromine is having a more higher atomic number compared to chlorine, and then carbon, and then hydrogen. So you will number this as 1, 2, 3, 4 depending upon the atomic number, and then see how is that number, whether that 1, 2, 3, 4 is in clockwise direction or in anti-clockwise direction. If you get it in clockwise direction, we call that as R. If you get it in anti-clockwise direction, we call that as S. So this is how we name the enantiomers as R and S, and this is configuration. You should understand that this designations R and S, they have no relationship whether the molecule rotates the plane polarized light in clockwise or anti-clockwise direction. That is optical rotation. So now what is optical rotation? It refers to the ability of a compound to rotate the plane of polarized light. If it rotates the light towards right, we call that as dextrorotatory, which is designated as plus. If it rotates the light towards the left, we call it as levorotatory, and it is designated as minus. When it comes to configuration, you can look at this molecule and considering the atomic number, you can designate it as R and S. But when it comes to optical rotation, you cannot say that by just looking at the molecule. It is determined experimentally whether it rotates the light clockwise or anti-clockwise. So remember, configuration refers to the spatial arrangement of atoms, and optical rotation refers to the ability of that particular molecule to rotate the plane of polarized light. Now coming back to that retention of configuration, if this is the alkyl halide, optically active alkyl halide, and this is the product when it is treated with a nucleophile. Now see, suppose if this is given R designation, your product will also be R. See, because the spatial arrangement is not changed. Instead of X, you get Y. All the others remain the same, A, B and C. So now we call this as retention of configuration. Now in terms of optical rotation, if you have taken plus, your product can be plus or minus. So what is retained? Configuration is retained, but there is no correlation between the configuration and the optical rotation. So if you take minus 2 methyl butane 1-ol, when there is retention of configuration, the product may be levorotatory or dextrorotatory, but what will not be changed? The spatial arrangement will not be changed. So remember, the optical rotation of an optically active compound can be determined experimentally. Just by looking at the compound, you cannot say whether it is dextrorotatory or levorotatory. Thank you.